photographs there of a very well-known face. Someone who needs no introduction, Paddy Ladd. Paddy, can I ask you how you got your sign name, which is the same as the one for Jesus?
Well, in my first job connected to the deaf world, I was a social worker with deaf children and young people. So I started work, and one night I went to a youth club, and when I went in, the deaf kids started nudging each other, saying, "Look who's just walked in. It's Jesus. Jesus." And the more I tried to stop them calling me that, the more they did it. It became a great joke. But at the same time, I was touched. A sign name given to me by young deaf people, so I cherish that.
That's really nice. Now, you're also well known all over the world as the person who came up with the concept of deafhood. I know we'll talk a lot more about deafhood later. But for now, just for reference, could you explain briefly for our audience what deafhood means? What is it?
Well, it's hard to sum it up, but I can try. OK, let's see. The aim of deafhood is to heal the deaf community, because the deaf community has suffered for so many years. So how can we heal it, nurture it back to health? How can we help it rebuild its confidence and strength, to challenge oppression? So that's the overall aim, but there are many layers to that, which we'll come to later.
Right, thank you. Now, for the person who came up with the concept of deafhood, and have done so much to develop it, something that's really surprising to learn was that till you were in your 20s, you thought you were a hearing person. People told you you weren't deaf. You were hearing and you believed them. Then the truth dawned on you and you developed deafhood.
No, no, no. I never believed I was a hearing person. No, no. They saw me as a hearing person, and they tried to persuade me of that. They told me I wasn't deaf. It was just that I couldn't hear. It's that old oralist lie, the lie you always get from these people. So I knew I was deaf. There were always barriers and communication problems. I think when I was small, at the age when I was just playing around, I didn't really understand. But as I grew older, I knew the barriers, the communication difficulties at school, growing up in mainstream, all the barriers, all the times I didn't understand what people said, being made fun of, all those things. So I did know I was deaf. But what it meant to be deaf, that was different. But going back to what you said, how it hit home to me, I'd finished college and I started looking for a job. So I sent off lots of applications. And I kept getting turned down. So I thought, maybe I should become a teacher of deaf children. So I sent off an application for that. And when I got the reply, the answer was, no, because you're deaf. There it was on the letter, the same people who'd been telling me all the time I was growing up, oh, you're not deaf. Get it? And it was at that moment that it hit me. I realised I had been lied to all my life. They were all lies. And that was a wake-up call. I realised there was something dirty going on behind the scenes, something dirty happening there. But it wasn't that I believed that, no.
So, let's look at you. You were born in 1952 in the south of England, in Windsor, to working-class hearing parents. What were they like?
Yes, proud working class. I'm proud of that. My father had a wage of £11 a week, and he worked 7 days a week for that. Plus, he worked in the evenings to bring in extra money. So, I saw what he went through. But, to go back, I should have been born much earlier, 17 years earlier. What happened, my parents kept trying to have a baby, but they kept failing. So in the end, my father went to see a doctor. He borrowed money from somebody and went to see a posh doctor in Harley Street. So they did some tests, and when the results came back, they said, sorry, your sperm aren't very good swimmers. They keep on drowning. So he said, well, what can I do? and they told him you have to eat a full lettuce every day for 5 years.
Really?
After that, your sperm will be able to swim. So he ate all this lettuce for 5 years, and finally I was born, but I was deaf. So does that mean eating a lot of lettuce makes you deaf?
Who knows? Maybe.
The worst thing is, I hate lettuce. I think it's repulsive. I wonder why. Anyway, that was what happened. I realised later that lettuce has a lot of vitamin E, so that could have something to do with it. But thank God, I'm happy I was born later, because it meant I was involved in the hippie era. If I'd been born earlier, I'd probably been a real stuffed shirt, a completely different person. Can you imagine? So, my family, there are some sad things there. My mother had me, then later on my brother was born. And right after that, she was diagnosed with cancer. So it was a bad time. I kept it bottled up for many years. I didn't want to talk about it. You know, I'm all right. All families have problems. That's life. But recently, I've started to feel those repressed feelings welling up, choking me, really flooring me. So I realise I have to face up to this and try to understand what happened at that time. I'm sure some people watching will understand. If you had an illness at that time, you've got a mother thinking about those 2 babies in the house and knowing it might not be long before she dies. And the father's full of worry about the situation. That creates a difficult atmosphere, and children pick up on that. They don't know exactly what's going on, but they pick up the vibes, those bad vibes and energies every day, and don't have the support to help them get through that. So I'd see my mother collapse and get rushed to hospital. She'd collapse. I remember visiting her in hospital again and again for 6 years, and then she died and she was gone. And after that, I'd no support. My father was on his own, bringing the 2 of us up. I feel for him. At that time, it was very rare for fathers to bring up children on their own. There was a risk that we might be put in a children's home, but my father was adamant that he was going to bring us up. So it's complicated. It was a long story and a hard story, but yes, that definitely affected my character and made me who I am now.
We've talked about you growing up. You were deaf, but you were quite lucky, because before you went to school, your mother taught you to read. Is that right?
Yes, that's interesting. It's linked to what I said about them waiting for 17 years before I was born. My mother had strong ideas about what she wanted for her baby. So after I was born, she didn't waste any time. She got me on her lap and started reading to me, telling me things. So that helped me a lot. It meant before I went to school, I could read and write fairly well. But one interesting thing, you know, some people, I don't know if you are the same, some mothers, when the baby's born, they have a baby book. They keep a record of the child's progress, their weight, their first words, and so on. I had one of those, and I was flicking through it once, and I noticed that as soon as I was diagnosed as deaf, my mother stopped recording anything. She put it away and never touched it again.
Why do you think she put it away? What benefit could there have been in that?
No, keeping a record was a way of expressing pride in her son. It was a crushing blow when she found out I was deaf. It broke her heart. So she didn't want to keep on recording. Finished. It's interesting. I didn't realise until one day I picked up the book and looked at the date of the last entry. Oh, that was when they diagnosed I was deaf. That was when she put away the book. Do you understand? That was it.
How did you feel when you saw that?
Well, I felt sorry for my parents. I felt sorry for them. They had high hopes. They finally had a child, and now he was deaf. At that time, they didn't understand, you know? I mean, the doctor said to them, real codswallop, he said, "You must send the boy to a residential school in Manchester." When I was 4, just 4. Manchester, can you imagine? Rubbish, what are you talking about? There must have been an oral school nearer. Anyway, it had to be an oral school, and Manchester was very oral at that time. But no way did my mother want that. She wanted to keep me at home. She'd had me, and she wanted to keep me beside her. So she was clever. She went to a local hearing school and saw the headmistress, who was very old-fashioned, very prim and proper, unmarried, a bit snooty, all that. And she said to the headmistress, "I have a son, but I feel you wouldn't be able to cope with him." So the headmistress said, "Who says I can't cope with him? Bring him here." So my mother took me, and that's how I got into a mainstream school. But really, I was one of the first age group to go into mainstream. This was even before partially hearing units, PHUs, before all that. So my experience was very strange. And because of what I went through, I could see what was coming up in the future with more and more deaf children going to mainstream schools. That's why I feel I have a responsibility to speak out, to expose all their lies, you know?
So, after your mother tragically died, how did that affect your relationship with your father and your younger brother?
Ooh, sensitive. That is sensitive. Okay, my father was a typical father for that time. He grew up in a very Victorian atmosphere with a Victorian philosophy. He himself didn't have a proper mother and father. So his responsibility was to work hard, 7 days a week. That was his focus for £11 a week. He worked in the evenings and so on. But he was a man who didn't know how to give us praise or encourage us and be positive. So he never gave me a word of praise for anything until the day he died. He never had anything positive to say about me. It was always just telling me off, telling me how I could improve, scolding, lecturing, and that was hard for me. I was really quite withdrawn on my own. Who was there to look after me, you know? But I do have to take my hat off to him. He kept us and he tried his best for us. That means a lot, and I love him for that. My brother, well, poor thing, he had it even worse. My mother, when I was born, she looked after me for 18 months, so that wasn't too bad before she became ill. So that gave me some inner reserves, that 18 months of something positive. I can't remember that time, of course, but it did give me something. My brother didn't have anything like that. Nothing. So I do feel sorry for him. He was always a bit wayward and wild. He was a lost soul. So with him, when I look back, I feel really bad about it. I should have been more supportive of him. It's a long story, but he went off the rails and his life went right downhill, and that does affect me. So, should I have done more? Yes, but people have said to me, you were only young yourself, so I have to take that on board, so, okay.
In the end, your father felt he couldn't stay in Windsor, and he moved to a small village near Swindon with you and your younger brother. So you moved from one mainstream school to another. Did that make a big difference?
Yeah, that was really important, but again, it was something I repressed, how that affected me, and just carried on with life. It was only recently that it hit me, and I started to examine how these things affected me. So I realised that my home life was awful, sad, terrible. My mother died when I was 8, and she'd been ill since I was 2, so that was 6 years. My escape from that, where I could be happy, was either with my grandparents or at school. School was fun, just laughing and playing around. You don't have to talk much to each other at that age. It's more just playing around. So school was like a happy escape for me, smashing. Then my father said he couldn't cope in their house. Everything there reminded him of my mother. So he felt he had to leave. So we moved to this village. That was when it hit me. That was when I felt it. I remember one night, sat in my room, looking up to God and saying, "You don't want me. Be happy." Sorry, start again. I remember one night I was sat in my room and I realised something. So I looked up to God and said, "You don't want me to be happy in this life. My job's only to serve other people, to make other people happy." Terrible. I was 8 or 9 and I said that to myself. Because that move, being uprooted and everything I'd built up just collapsing, moving and having to start again. You know, it's difficult enough in the hearing world. Then on top of that, I had to start at another mainstream school for the second time. Oh, it was horrendous. So that was hard. And it was a tiny village. Can you believe it? The only deaf in the village. Then it got even worse at secondary school.
So let me ask you, how did you cope with life in a mainstream secondary school? Tell us about that.
Honestly, when I look back, I don't know how I coped. Football was one thing. That was an escape for me. I could relax at break times, lunch times. I always went to play football, just play and play. So for 5 years, that was okay. But in sixth form, we weren't allowed to play football. So things went right down for me because of that. So that was football. And really, I think everybody saw me as a weirdo. I'd sit in a corner and play games by myself, writing things in a book. I tried to make out what people were talking about, but it was too hard. They were all just talking away to each other. That was the worst thing from 11 upward. I just couldn't keep up, couldn't make out what they were saying. So I think, looking back, I was just numb. Numb. I felt nothing. I just shut things out and shut myself off, you know. It was weird. Looking back, I remember people saying things like, "Come and join the Scouts," or "Come to church." But I would just back away. I wanted everybody to go away and leave me alone. Just shut the door. I retreated from other people. Looking back from now, it was weird. But of course, in mainstream, there wasn't much option. So psychologically, I just wanted other people to go away and leave me alone. It was strange, really. So that was how I got through school, by being a recluse. It was a horrible time. 18 years. I realised I just shut off those 18 years as though they never happened.
So at mainstream school, and maybe this is still the case, you were quite a reclusive person. What did you see inside yourself at the time? What was going on inside you?
That's the point, you see. You feel numb. You don't feel anything. You just lock that off and close it down, close everything off. I mean, I was lonely and I didn't have any support from my parents. I had no aunts and uncles for support, so there was nothing. There was nothing there. So it's hard to think, how did I cope with that? I think I just froze up, shut the door and closed down. I think you'd have to ask other mainstreamers how they coped if they were similar to me. It's just, you cut off your feelings, cut off your own feelings. I mean, really, but at the same time, I know it was painful. I think the most painful time was when I was 15, 16 and started taking an interest in girls. Because my first school was a mixed school, I mixed with the other pupils, played with them, and I was quite confident. Then when I moved to my next school, I was less confident, but I could still socialise a bit. But then, when I moved to secondary school, it was boys only. So that really ruined things for me, ruined them. How could I talk to girls? So that was the most painful time, because I did want to try and talk to them, but I was scared. How would we communicate? So I did close off a lot of things inside me, but at the same time it was very negative as well. There was a lot of sadness. Well, it's interesting that you're asking me these questions and I'm here talking openly about it. It's quite hard to talk about this openly, but at the same time I think it's important because I feel the worst problem with the widespread growth of mainstreaming is the psychological risk, the danger of people going through psychological hell, suffering psychological abuse and psychological damage. People just point at the so-called great results and pretend everything's fine. So I feel I have a responsibility to be open, but it's weird trying to answer your questions, very weird. I don't have a lot of ready answers tucked up my sleeve that I can pull out whenever needed. When you ask me, I have to chew it over and take a good look at myself. I'm not sure.
After school, you went to Reading University to study English literature. And there you found happiness, as it were, through music, politics, and the hippie movement. And you still embrace that hippie culture now. Tell us about that.
Oh, that was a transformative experience. It was wonderful. It changed my life completely. It was weird. My life changed overnight. It wasn't a gradual thing. It happened very quickly, just like that. I was already keen on music while I was growing up. It was something inside me. I forgot to mention that before, sorry. And I had a set of headphones, of course, but it was interesting. Let's start with music, okay? If you compare music with trying to follow conversations through lip reading, okay? If people are talking and you miss something or get it wrong, you don't know what they're talking about, or they might even be making fun of you. With music, you may struggle a bit, but what you hear is yours. It belongs to you. You know what I mean? You may not hear everything, maybe only bits, but that doesn't matter. That's yours. It goes into your brain and helps form your vision. So it's interesting, yeah. When I knew I was coming here to talk to you, I tried to analyse these things, and I realised it goes back to when I'd be sitting in my room on my own at home, listening to the radio, pirate radio. I could hear the music, but I'd no idea what they were saying in between, even the names of the songs. But there was a connection with music, which I didn't get with people. So it didn't matter if I got some things wrong with the music. But socially, if I got things wrong, that was it. Everything got screwed up. So, anyway, music. It's something deep inside me. If you're mad about music, that's it. A lot of hearing people aren't that crazy about music either. They just take it for granted. It's just something that's there on the radio. It's a small percentage of people who are really crazy about music, and I just happen to be one of them. Anyway, to go back, the point is, in university, I was lucky that I went during the hippie era. Perfect timing. So the hearing students just accepted who I was. Oh, you're deaf. That's interesting. That's different. Before that, people would see me as being deaf, different, in a negative way.
Interesting.
At that time, a lot of people had long hair. That didn't mean they were hippies. Know what I mean? There was a difference. It's like not all Jamaicans with dreadlocks were Rastas. It was just about the fashion. So, in my 3 years at Reading, I got involved in politics and all sorts of other stuff, and I could already see who was serious and who wasn't serious. The ones who were serious in our group are still serious today. They've never given up. They haven't changed. The ones who were just following the fashion because it was the dumb thing, they've changed. So really, I think we were very clear at that time, quite clear. But there was still hope that we could get more people involved. But then they drifted away and we realised, no. So, for me, maybe it's linked to suffering, childhood suffering. I had suffered, and looking round other people in my group, you could pick out how they'd all suffered. Some of them were physically handicapped, had epilepsy. They'd all suffered in different ways. People who've suffered are more sensitive and more likely to support others. So we could identify people like that. There were others in the group who didn't see themselves in that way. So we looked at them and realised they were all former Catholics who'd left the church. So there you go, yes, they'd suffered as well. During the hippie era, being different became something positive. You could be different because you came from a different country or followed a different religion or whatever other differences you had, people would be fascinated. That was the open-minded ethos at the time. So I was accepted very quickly. I still had trouble following things through lip reading, of course. I had no idea what the lecturers were saying, all that. But I managed to get by in a creative way. And my political philosophy changed overnight. The first term lasted 10 weeks, from October to Christmas. And even in my first, second, third week, I changed. At the end of the week, I looked up to God and said, thank you, thank you, thank you for saving me. Things just suddenly fell into place. It's interesting, looking back now, how quickly I became politically aware. I read things and everything just fell into place, just like that. And I just changed. It was like something deep inside me had been waiting. Something really tiny had been sleeping, timidly, until suddenly the door opened and the light flooded in and it burst into life. So powerful.
Now, it's common knowledge that you're against mainstream education. So how much is that linked to your own experience and what you yourself went through at school?
Yes, but it's not only me. I've seen what's happened to others too. As a social worker, I saw deaf children in mainstream schools. I've seen deaf children as day pupils at deaf schools, and I've seen deaf children in residential schools. I've seen all of those. So, which of those was better informed? Who were the most mature when they grew up? It was the ones who were in residential schools. And yes, it's also linked to my own experience. Oralists think I'm a success. I tick all their boxes. Well, more fool them. You think I'm a success? Well, you're wrong. Inside the veneer, the positive front I present to the outside world, I'm struggling inside. I've got low confidence, I'm damaged psychologically, I've got low self-esteem. I was only half a person. Where could I find the missing half? I only found that other half when I joined the deaf community. Now I was a full person. So they can't argue with me. I've got a degree, I've got all those other things, and I'm still not satisfied. I knew what I was missing. You couldn't care less. You don't care what's missing. When they're 16, you just throw deaf children out and wash your hands of them. You'll never see them again. So it's linked to my experience, yes, but not just my experience. It's what I've seen other people go through as well.